The countdown to the next phase of a fragile ceasefire has begun, and the world's attention is now fixed on Pakistan's capital, Islamabad. In the coming hours, the city will host one of the most sensitive diplomatic meetings in recent months. Delegations from the United States and Iran are expected to arrive for talks that could determine whether the current pause in hostilities survives or collapses into a wider regional conflict. For Pakistan, the stakes are enormous. Islamabad has effectively transformed into a fortified zone as thousands of security personnel spread across the city to secure government buildings, diplomatic compounds, and the hotel where negotiations are expected to take place. Roads leading into the administrative red zone are restricted, patrol units are stationed on surrounding hills, and security agencies are coordinating every movement of visiting delegations. The goal is simple but crucial: ensure the negotiations happen without disruption. The urgency of these talks is tied directly to the ceasefire timeline. The temporary truce between the United States and Iran is scheduled to expire soon, leaving only a narrow diplomatic window to reduce tensions and create a framework for longer-term stability. But even before the delegations sit down across the negotiating table, signs of strain are already emerging. Washington and Tehran are sending sharply different messages to the world. U.S. President Donald Trump has once again warned Iran publicly, accusing Tehran of failing to respect parts of the agreement, particularly concerning activity around the Strait of Hormuz. For global markets and international security planners, that narrow waterway carries enormous significance. Nearly 20% of the world's oil shipments pass through the strait, making it one of the most strategically important maritime corridors on the planet. Any disruption there immediately triggers concerns about global energy prices and economic stability. Iran, however, is presenting a very different narrative. Officials in Tehran insist they are defending national rights and sovereignty, particularly regarding their nuclear program and regional influence. In recent remarks delivered through state media, Iran's leadership made it clear that the country will not abandon what it calls its legitimate rights, and it warned that the cost of recent attacks and casualties will not be forgotten. These statements underline the central tension shaping the upcoming negotiations. Both sides are approaching the talks with firm red lines. For Washington, preventing Iran from acquiring the capability to produce nuclear weapons remains a core objective. For Tehran, maintaining the right to uranium enrichment and securing relief from international sanctions are equally non-negotiable priorities. Beyond the nuclear question, the diplomatic agenda also includes the broader geopolitical dynamics unfolding across the region. One of the most immediate concerns involves maritime security in the Strait of Hormuz. Shipping traffic through the passage has slowed significantly in recent days, partly because of uncertainty about whether vessels will face new restrictions or additional costs. Reports suggest that Iranian authorities may attempt to exert tighter control over navigation in the strait, a development that Washington strongly opposes. The United States insists that international waterways must remain open and free for global commerce. Meanwhile, another volatile issue looms in the background: the ongoing confrontation in Lebanon involving Israel and Hezbollah. Iran views Hezbollah as a key partner within its regional network, and Tehran has suggested that any lasting ceasefire should also address hostilities in Lebanon. Israel and the United States, however, argue that the current truce is limited to direct U.S.-Iran conflict and should not automatically extend to other fronts. This disagreement illustrates just how complex the diplomatic challenge has become. Even as negotiators prepare to meet, the wider region remains tense, with multiple flashpoints capable of derailing progress. For now, the talks in Islamabad represent a rare moment when diplomacy might slow the momentum toward escalation. Whether that opportunity leads to meaningful compromise or simply exposes deeper divisions will become clear once the negotiations begin. As the negotiations approach, Islamabad itself has become a focal point of global diplomacy and security planning. Authorities in Pakistan have launched one of the most extensive security operations the capital has seen in years. Thousands of officers from multiple security agencies have been deployed across the city to ensure that every aspect of the visit remains tightly controlled. Reports indicate that around 10,000 security personnel are participating in the operation, including officers from the Islamabad Capitol Police, units from the Punjab Constabulary, traffic police responsible for controlling major routes, and additional support from elite security forces. The deployment reflects the sensitive nature of the talks and the high-profile figures expected to attend. Surveillance teams are monitoring the surrounding hills overlooking the capital, particularly the Margalla Hills, which provide a strategic vantage point over much of the city. These elevated positions are being guarded to prevent any potential security threat from approaching the negotiation venues. Inside the city's administrative heart, commonly known as the Red Zone, Dr. Weighing access has been tightly restricted. This area contains the Parliament building, foreign ministry offices, diplomatic missions, and several international organizations. Security checkpoints have been reinforced and most entry points sealed, leaving only limited access for authorized officials and residents with special clearance. Traffic movement across several major roads has been restricted, and specific routes have been designated for diplomatic motorcades traveling between the airport, government buildings, and the hotel where delegations are expected to stay. The Serena Hotel, a well-known diplomatic venue in Islamabad, has reportedly been fully reserved for the visiting delegations and their staff. Security teams have conducted detailed sweeps of the entire facility to detect any listening devices or suspicious materials that could compromise the confidentiality of the negotiations. Even logistical details such as transportation fuel, communication equipment, and staff movement are being monitored under strict protocols designed for high-level diplomatic protection. The visiting delegations themselves represent powerful political and diplomatic actors whose decisions could influence regional stability. The United States delegation is expected to be led by Vice President J.D. Vance, who has already signaled cautious optimism about the talks. According to his remarks before departing Washington, the United States is willing to negotiate constructively if Iran demonstrates genuine commitment to diplomacy. At the same time, he emphasized that American negotiators will remain firm if they believe Tehran is attempting to delay or manipulate the process. Alongside the vice president, other prominent figures reportedly involved in the negotiations include senior diplomatic advisors and special envoys who have been closely involved in shaping the administration's strategy toward Iran. On the Iranian side, senior political leaders and foreign policy officials are expected to represent Tehran's interests, although final confirmations about the full delegation have remained uncertain. Iranian representatives have also signaled that their participation may depend on certain conditions, including discussions about sanctions relief and broader regional ceasefire arrangements. The structure of the talks may itself reflect the deep mistrust that has characterized relations between the two countries for decades. Instead of direct face-to-face negotiations, some reports suggest that the delegations could remain in separate rooms, communicating through Pakistani mediators who would carry proposals and responses back and forth. This indirect format has been used in previous diplomatic engagements when tensions between parties made direct interaction politically difficult. In such a scenario, Pakistan would play a crucial role not only as the host country, but also as a facilitator responsible for maintaining communication channels between the two sides. This arrangement highlights Islamabad's attempt to position itself as a neutral venue capable of managing delicate international diplomacy. For Pakistan, successfully hosting the talks could strengthen its diplomatic credibility on the global stage. However, the challenge remains enormous. The discussions are expected to cover complex issues ranging from nuclear policy and sanctions to maritime security and regional conflicts. Each topic carries its own political sensitivities, and reaching even partial agreement will require careful negotiation, patience, and a willingness from both sides to consider compromise. While diplomatic efforts continue in Islamabad, events unfolding across the wider region are constantly threatening to undermine those negotiations. One of the most volatile fronts remains Lebanon, where tensions between Israel and Hezbollah have intensified in recent days. Reports from Beirut describe devastating airstrikes that have caused widespread destruction and significant civilian casualties. Hospitals in the Lebanese capital and surrounding regions have been overwhelmed as medical teams struggle to treat the injured and identify the dead. dead. Entire neighborhoods have been shaken by the scale of the bombardment, and rescue teams continue to search through damaged buildings for survivors. The humanitarian consequences are already severe, with hundreds of thousands of people displaced and communities forced to flee their homes in search of safety. For many civilians caught in the conflict, the violence has become a daily reality, raising fears that the situation could spiral into an even larger regional confrontation. Israel maintains that its operations are focused on weakening Hezbollah's military infrastructure and preventing future attacks on its northern territory. Hezbollah, however, has responded by launching rockets toward northern Israeli cities, triggering air raid sirens and forcing residents to seek shelter. Although many of these projectiles have been intercepted by defense systems, the exchange of fire demonstrates how quickly the situation can escalate. At the same time, political leaders in Israel have suggested that negotiations with Lebanon could eventually take place, particularly regarding the disarmament of Hezbollah and the possibility of a long-term security arrangement. Yet those statements are paired with clear warnings that military operations will continue until Israeli objectives are achieved. This dual strategy, pursuing diplomatic channels while maintaining pressure through force, illustrates the complicated political environment surrounding the broader conflict. For Iran, the situation in Lebanon is closely linked to the wider confrontation with the United States and its allies. Tehran considers Hezbollah a key partner within its regional network, and Iranian officials have indicated that any meaningful ceasefire should address ongoing hostilities involving Israel and Lebanese territory. However, Washington and Tel Aviv have taken a different position, arguing that the current truce primarily concerns direct tensions between the United States and Iran, rather than every conflict in the region. This disagreement highlights a fundamental challenge facing negotiators in Islamabad. The Middle East security landscape is deeply interconnected, and developments in one country often influence conflicts elsewhere. As long as fighting continues in Lebanon, the diplomatic atmosphere surrounding the talks remains fragile. Adding further uncertainty is a mysterious incident involving a high-tech American surveillance drone that disappeared over the Strait of Hormuz. The aircraft, known as the MQ-4C Triton, is one of the most advanced unmanned systems used by the U.S. Navy for monitoring maritime activity. During what appeared to be a routine mission, the drone reportedly transmitted an emergency distress signal before suddenly dropping from radar screens. No official explanation has been confirmed, leaving analysts debating whether the disappearance was caused by mechanical failure, electronic interference, or possible hostile action. Given the strategic importance of the Strait of Hormuz, through which a significant portion of the world's oil shipments travel, the incident has attracted global attention. If the drone was indeed lost due to confrontation or interference, it could complicate already tense relations between Washington and Tehran. Taken together, these developments illustrate how fragile the current diplomatic moment truly is. The negotiations in Islamabad are intended to stabilize relations and prevent further escalation, yet the broader geopolitical environment remains unpredictable. Military clashes in Lebanon, uncertainty in the Persian Gulf, and political divisions within major powers all contribute to a climate of tension that could disrupt the negotiation process at any moment. Diplomacy in this context is not simply about drafting agreements on paper. It is about managing multiple crises simultaneously while trying to prevent the next spark from igniting a larger conflict. Whether the talks succeed or fail will likely depend not only on what is said across negotiating tables in Islamabad, but also on events unfolding across the region in the days ahead. Beyond the military developments and diplomatic negotiations, another dramatic political story is unfolding inside the United States itself. The controversy centers on President Donald Trump and a growing divide within the political movement that helped bring him to power. For nearly a decade, the slogan "Make America Great Again," commonly known as MAGA, has defined one of the most influential political movements in modern American politics. Millions of supporters rallied around the message, forming a powerful coalition of voters, media personalities, political activists, and digital influencers. That coalition played a decisive role in Trump's rise to the presidency and continued to shape the Republican political landscape, However, recent events suggest that this once unified movement is beginning to show serious fractures, particularly in response to the ongoing conflict involving Iran and the broader Middle East. The division emerged as debates intensified over the United States' involvement in the regional conflict. Within conservative circles, two different viewpoints have become increasingly visible. One group supports a more aggressive approach toward Iran, arguing that the United States should apply maximum pressure and, if necessary, expand military operations to weaken Tehran's leadership. These voices believe that strong military action is essential to protect American interests and support allies in the region. On the other side of the debate are those who identify strongly with the America First philosophy that Trump himself promoted during his earlier campaigns. This faction argues that the United States should avoid becoming deeply involved in another prolonged overseas conflict. They point out that Trump's earlier political messaging emphasized ending endless wars and focusing on domestic priorities such as economic growth, border security, and national infrastructure. For these supporters, the possibility of deeper involvement in a Middle Eastern conflict appears to contradict the original promise of keeping America out of costly foreign entanglements. Tensions escalated further when prominent conservative media personalities and commentators began publicly criticizing the administration's rhetoric surrounding the Iran conflict. Figures who once strongly supported Trump began questioning whether the current strategy aligned with the principles that initially defined the MAGA movement. Some commentators described the tone of certain presidential statements as unnecessarily aggressive, while others warned that escalating threats could push the United States closer to another large-scale military confrontation. The criticism quickly spread across social media platforms, podcasts, and digital news outlets, creating a highly visible debate within the conservative political ecosystem. For a movement that has long prided itself on unity and loyalty, the public nature of this disagreement has attracted considerable attention. President Trump responded forcefully to the criticism through posts on his social media platform, Truth Social. In a lengthy message, he dismissed several of the critics as opportunists seeking publicity and argued that they no longer represented the true spirit of the MAGA movement. His remarks included sharp personal attacks and accusations that some former allies were attempting to weaken the political coalition that had supported him for years. The exchange quickly escalated into a broader political argument, with supporters on both sides defending their positions. For some observers, the dispute represents more than just an online argument. It highlights deeper ideological questions about the future direction of American conservative politics. The importance of this internal debate extends beyond partisan politics. The MAGA movement has developed a vast media network capable of reaching millions of voters through alternative platforms outside traditional news organizations. Podcasts, independent video channels, and social media influencers have become powerful tools for shaping political narratives. If a significant portion of that network turns against the administration's policies, it could alter public perception and influence future elections. At the same time, opinion polls indicate that many Republican voters still support a strong stance against Iran, suggesting that the movement remains divided, but not necessarily fractured beyond repair. As the United States approaches another election cycle, the outcome of this debate could play a significant role in determining how American voters evaluate foreign policy decisions and leadership strategies. In the midst of international tensions and delicate diplomatic negotiations, this domestic political conflict adds yet another layer of complexity to an already uncertain global landscape. We do so now.